Welcome back to another episode of Dreading, or if this is your first time here, welcome. Today we're going to be covering the still unsolved case of Missy Bevers, a woman whose killer was caught on camera but still remains at large. This case has been one that we've wanted to cover for a few years, but always held out hope that by the time we got around to it, we could say it had finally been solved. Unfortunately, as we've been working over the past 3 years, there have been no new updates. As always, cold cases tend to live and die by the public's general awareness. When the public demands answers from law enforcement, when the news stations refuse to let a case die, and reporting brings the story to new eyes, that is when we typically see action. And unfortunately again, because the case is still ongoing, a substantial amount of information has not been made public by the police. Obviously, they do want to keep some information private out of respect for Missy, as well as to preserve the investigation. However, this makes reporting on and around the case somewhat difficult. If you sincerely believe that you know something about this crime, or recognize the suspect in the footage provided, or genuinely believe that you have information that could lead to Missy's killer being caught, multiple links will be left in the description box down below for you to submit it to the Midlothian Police Department. You can make an anonymous tip by texting MIDL in your tip to 847411, or by calling Crime Stoppers of Ellis County at 972-937-PAYS, P-A-Y-S. Only use those resources if you actually have information. Submitting a false tip because you're bored or you want to feel important is not only a waste of the police department's time, but actively hurts the investigation. So, with all of that said, let us begin. Missy Bevers was born Terry Leanne Strickland in the summer of 1970 in the quiet Texas town of Graham. Like a lot of small-town kids, she grew up surrounded by family, faith, and the kind of routine that feels unremarkable at the time but ends up defining a person. Her parents, James and Norma, were known to their community as hardworking, decent people. Friends who knew Missy as a girl described her as warm and charismatic, someone who anyone could talk to, but also was deeply empathetic. She was one of the kids who noticed when someone was left out and found a way to pull them in. Missy was described, even early in her life, as a straightforward go-getter who never met a challenge that she couldn't overcome. She was constantly pushing herself and those around her to do the best that they possibly could, especially when it was hard. After graduating from Jacksboro High School, Missy went on to study at Tarleton State University, earning her bachelor's degree in the mid-90s. Shortly after obtaining her degree, she would meet and then marry Brandon Bevers. By all accounts, she was not someone chasing prestige or excitement. Instead, she gravitated towards work that meant something, work that helped people. After marrying Brandon, Missy would go back to school to get a teaching certificate in special education and would become a teacher's assistant. Her position was difficult and required a fair bit of patience, compassion, and the ability to stay calm when things became unpredictable. Coworkers remembered her as being upbeat and dependable, the kind of teacher who made learning feel safe and fun for the kids who needed it the most. She taught up until she had her first child, Hannah, in 2001. She would go on to have 2 more daughters in the coming years, and would ultimately choose to be a stay-at-home mother. The family looked picture-perfect from the outside. Church on Sundays, barbecues with friends, school drop-offs, birthday parties, all that stuff. But like any family balancing jobs, bills, and kids, there were pressures behind the scenes. However, Missy always seemed to thrive under pressure. She would focus her stress and energy onto things that she could actually control, and that meant her own health and fitness. She began working out every day, and her physical transformation would eventually lead to people around her asking for advice and coaching. It started small, just helping friends and church members get into shape, but before long, she had joined Camp Gladiator, a well-known outdoor fitness boot camp. Camp Gladiator was a workout program that has been compared to an MLM, largely due to how the company itself works alongside trainers. However, Missy was exceptionally gifted at what she did. This ultimately was a place where people could get stronger and lose weight, but it was also about connection and building a community where people could feel good about themselves. Those who trained with her described her as a force of nature. She was up before dawn, rain or shine, setting up cones and mats in the dark before her classes began. She didn't cancel easily. If the weather was bad, she would move the class indoors. If attendance dropped, she found ways to motivate people to come back. Her students admired her consistency, that quiet accountability that comes from someone who practices what they preach. She also wouldn't let her students off the hook so easily. She would push people past where they wanted to stop, believing that they had one more rep in them, and celebrating when they actually did. By 2016, Missy's life had become a balancing act. She was well-liked, respected, and seemingly thriving, but there were stress fractures beneath the surface. According to family and friends, her marriage had been strained in the months before her death. Money was tight. She and Brandon were reportedly trying to work through communication issues and the fatigue that comes from years of juggling family and career. There are some reports that state that there were conversations surrounding an extramarital relationship. However, it's unclear as to who those statements are referring to. Missy had also begun receiving strange messages via LinkedIn. She had shown the messages to a friend, finding them off-putting and creepy, but ultimately wrote these off as a stranger just being a bit too weird. After some time, Missy began communicating with this person, and the messages became a bit more familiar and flirty, according to the police. However, it's unclear if Missy ever met up with this person, or if he then became known to her. According to those around her, in April of 2016, Missy had thrown herself into her work. She'd been promoting new classes and encouraging her students to stay consistent. Those close to her said she seemed tired but motivated, proud of how far she had come as an instructor. She was running her Camp Gladiator sessions at Creekside Church of Christ in Midlothian, about 20 minutes drive from her home. They usually ran their camps outside. However, Missy had full permission to bring the classes indoors if the weather turned sour. And that's exactly what she planned to do April 18th, 2016, posting that there would be no excuses not to come to training because of the thunderstorm that had occurred the day prior. But unfortunately, Missy would never make it to that workout. The Camp Gladiators were set to work out April 18th at 5 a.m., which meant that Missy was set up at 3:30 in the morning, going about her daily routine to prepare. Oddly enough, as she ate breakfast and got dressed for the day at 3:50 a.m., an unknown person disguised in a police SWAT uniform would break into the Creekside Church of Christ. Though the person's entire visage was covered from head to toe, their height may be anywhere from 5'2" to 5'8". They entered the church by breaking a window on a door in the kitchen, then unlocking it. This door was not one of the main entrances, and indicated some prior knowledge of the building by the suspect. This person slowly wandered through the church's halls, going room to room with what appeared to be a hammer in hand, as if they were looking for someone or something in particular. They had a strange walk, which police had described repeatedly as duck-billed. This meant that their feet pointed outwards, instead of straight forward. Nothing about their movements indicated any sort of urgency or fear of being found out. As they moved about the church, they routinely caused damage to multiple structures and fixtures, making a mess of the area without a real purpose. Their behavior on the scene, as captured by security cameras inside the church, is entirely incongruent with a person attempting a burglary. In cases where a person is trying to rob an establishment, they're often going to do so as quickly and efficiently as possible. They aren't typically going to take their time and lazily walk through the building, checking doors and breaking glass, because their goal is to get what they need and get out without raising any suspicion. However, this person obviously didn't care about that. They aren't interested in finding high-value items in the church or being as quiet as possible. Instead, it's as if they're purposely inviting attention to their actions by making a mess. Moreover, if they were simply there to rob the church, they chose a time in which they knew a workout class would be happening. Missy was well known for never canceling her classes, and had posted the night prior that she'd still be there bright and early, meaning that the suspect either just happened to break into the church right around the time when Missy would arrive, or that she was their target all along. It also doesn't make much sense to rob a church in the early morning hours, knowing that some churches do have early services. If this person wasn't targeting Missy, and rather wanted to vandalize and burglarize the church, they would have done so when they were less likely to have been caught. At 4:16 a.m., Missy would arrive at the church and begin setting up for her class. However, after entering the church, she would be attacked by the masked assailant. She'd been struck multiple times in the head and chest, according to her autopsy, and police have stated that the weapon that was used matches the tools that the suspect in the footage was seen carrying. Missy's body would be found by one of her trainees. However, the person who killed her had seemingly fled the scene without raising any suspicion. One of her trainees had arrived at the church at 4:35 a.m., barely 15 minutes after Missy entered the building. The trainee then sat in her car and hung out as she waited for the class to start, meaning that either the murder had already happened and the murderer had already fled the scene, or that they were able to leave the area without raising any sort of suspicion. Again, this indicates that the attack had been planned, and was not a spur-of-the-moment action done by a robber who had been caught off guard. One of the trainees would take it upon themselves to call Missy's husband, Brandon, while they waited for the police to arrive. According to Brandon, she informed him that Missy had been in some sort of an accident, which he took to mean a car accident. Brandon was about 600 miles away at the time of the murder, on a fishing trip with his father and several friends. He then called his sister, Christy, and told her that Missy had been in a car wreck. He asked her to go take care of the kids while he drove the 8 hours back home. However, the true nature of her death would be revealed to him by police a few hours later. It had been over 7 years since the last murder in Midlothian, Texas, and many believed that the case would quickly be solved. They had video of the suspect after all, and many believed that there must have been even more evidence that the police were keeping close to their chest. However, the case quickly went cold. Originally, the police would state that the person seen in the footage was a man, and that they may have had some connection to law enforcement, but after multiple experts reviewed the footage, they disagreed that anything about the suspect's gender could definitively be claimed. Some said that the walk was part of a temporary medical condition, while others claimed that the suspect was wearing shoes that were far too big for them in order to disguise their appearance. Regardless, the only thing that they could agree on was the fact that nothing was known for sure. The police then looked into Brandon, noting that he readily admitted that they were in the midst of financial and marital woes. However, he had one solid alibi, one that was confirmed by multiple independent witnesses as well as his phone's data. It was physically impossible for him to have been the one to have killed his wife. However, the investigation then turned to his father, Randy. Following Missy's murder, Randy had brought a bloody t-shirt to a local dry cleaner, despite the fact that the shirt was white and belonged to a woman, and was very obviously not the shirt worn by the killer at the scene. The employee who took the shirt immediately called the police, believing that Randy had just given them the evidence. Randy would be brought in for questioning about the shirt, and he stated that the blood belonged to their family dog, Kylo, who had been in a fight. The police then tested the blood and found that it wasn't human and matched his story. Videos still exist online comparing his walk to that of the killer, with people boldly claiming that it is direct evidence. However, just like with Brandon, Randy was hundreds of miles away at the time of the murder. A month after the murder, the police would update the public, saying that none of Missy's friends, family, or co-workers could be considered suspects. They had gone through and talked to everyone they could find, including the person who had sent the LinkedIn messages, and found nothing of interest to the investigation. They also informed the public that there was one person they were looking to talk to who was in the area at the time. At 2 a.m., nearly 2.5 hours before Missy's murder, a light-colored Nissan Altima with an oval sticker on its bumper was seen driving oddly in a shopping center parking lot across the street from the church. The driver pulled into the lot, repeatedly turned their headlights on and off, and drove in circles for approximately 6 minutes. The police stated that the driver of the car was not a suspect, but might have seen something suspicious in the area. But it's unlikely that that is the case. To be clear, the police likely stated that the driver of the car was not a suspect in order to give them a false sense of security so they would come forward. Oftentimes, guilty parties will insert themselves into police investigations, especially if they feel as if they aren't being looked at as a suspect, for a sense of security. But unfortunately, this call to action would seemingly yield no leads. And unfortunately again, this is where the case is today. Missy's life, of course, was not defined by the chaos that ended it, but by the quiet discipline that preceded it. She was the friend who showed up early, the teacher who stayed late, the mother who tried to do everything right. She loved deeply, gave freely, and believed that consistency could build safety. Missy's killer has yet to be brought to justice, and her family still has no answers as to what happened. And we hope that one day that changes. Again, if you sincerely believe that you know something about this crime, multiple links will be left in the description box down below, should you want to submit a tip to the Midlothian Police Department. You can make an anonymous tip by texting MIDL and your tip to 847411, or by calling Crime Stoppers of Ellis County at 972-397-PAYS. That is PAYS. With all that said, let us know what you think in the comments down below. Have a great day and remember, stay safe.